Before we get started, we just wanted to say thank you to Old Republic Surety for sponsoring this episode of Let's Get Surety, as well as NASBP's virtual seminars for the fourth year in a row. For more information on Old Republic Surety, visit www.orsurety.com. Now, on to our show.
You're listening to Let's Get Surety. Let me hear your bonding talk with Kat Shamapande.
Hey everyone, it's Kat Shamapande. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Let's Get Surety. Today we're going to be talking about an interesting issue. I know we've touched on it before, but it's so important right now. We're going to be talking about how we can break the bonds from the past and do that through the digitization of the surety industry. So to do that, I've got with me today my co-host, Mark McCallum, CEO of NASBP. Hey, Mark.
Hi, Kat. It's great to be back.
It's always good to have you co-host with me. And we're joined by a guest and our expert on this topic, Adam Gusson. He's Vice President of Surety for the Americas with Tinubu Square. Thanks for being on with us, Adam.
Thanks so much for having me, Kat. I really appreciate being here.
We are thrilled to have you. And let me tell you, every time I say Tinubu Square, I'm worried I'm not saying it correctly. Can you tell us a little bit about the Tinubu Square and yourself and maybe where that name came from?
Sure. So real briefly, I joined Tinubu Square about a year and a half ago after about 15 years in the trade credit industry, working both in the carrier and broker side of the business. Tinubu Square was founded 20 years ago. And the co-CEO or deputy CEO, Olivier Placat, is originally from Nigeria and now in France permanently. But in Lagos, Nigeria, there's an open-air marketplace called Tinubu Square, which is sort of the iconic place to do business, literally the marketplace in one of the largest cities in the world. And so the name Tinubu Square represents our doing business globally.
That's so interesting. I'd never heard that story before.
That is really interesting. So it's a central marketplace. Gee, that almost seems like a great segue to talk about maybe digitization and what opportunities there are to kind of make things more efficient and centralized to a certain extent, transactions. What do you think about that, Adam?
Yeah, no, I think absolutely. When we think about the surety marketplace as it is today, really relying on so many processes and procedures and just a general mindset that goes back to the beginning of surety.
Yep.
That there's the opportunity for us to come together to find that marketplace of ideas on best practices, on moving forward, on what the next step, not just for any one company, but for the whole industry as a whole, including obligees and principals and all of the different stakeholders involved in the transactions, not just carriers, but everyone at the table in one big place of exchange.
And I think you kind of really hit something on the head there about this diverse set of stakeholders and how that poses challenges when you come to standardization or even digitization. I mean, how have you dealt with that for your company and trying to kind of address stakeholder interest and then hear their concerns about the different systems they use?
Well, as you know, we're involved with the NASBP, we're involved with the SFAA, being not just focused on the carrier side, but making effort to really have outreach to the whole community. We have the ability to develop tools to see where the technology allows us to create efficiencies, but we can't force anything, right? It's got to be voluntary adoption. And so I think the challenge for us and the opportunity is to create something that the marketplace can't ignore, to develop tools and to move forward in a direction that just makes it better for everyone. Ultimately, that's the role that we provide. And then, as people become aware of different ways of doing business or different opportunities to make steps in the process easier, better, faster, cheaper to navigate, then it becomes a clear decision for those other stakeholders to latch on to these new ideas, new processes, new tools.
Well, I imagine in your own work, you're having to wrestle with the variety of perspectives, really, because you have these different diverse parties. I think maybe the producer's responsibilities lend itself to a certain perspective versus the obligees versus the surety carriers and other parties that may even interface. How have you dealt with that? How have you gone and tried to understand those perspectives and then translate them into accomplishing a better process?
Well, I think there's a few pieces in that. One is having our internal expertise. We have internally, like our subject matter expert, our product expert on eSurety, on our surety product, comes from the carrier world, was a product user at their, for a long time with their prior employer. Yeah. And so having in-house the 360-degree perspective, representing the carrier side, folks with broker experience, people that come from the broker agent world, and really, bringing those experiences into our family, literally, allow us to have sensitivities to those sometimes disparate needs of those stakeholders.
Right.
And so I think that gives us a great insight. And then, not that we know everything, but we know enough to know what questions to ask. And that's really important, is that we don't assume we know everything, but we know enough to know where we can ask folks to share and help us continuously improve.
Adam, do you see any other roadblocks to digitization besides the diverse groups we're trying to pull in and get to work together?
Well, there's time and money.
those little things.
And so, like any change management, there's got to be a clear vision that where we are today is not desirable, that there is a place we want to go to, and there's a roadmap on how to get there.
How do you think we should, or how should organizations, underwriters and producers be preparing for this? Like, are there steps they can take to be ready as we move towards this?
Well, so I think one thing, and unfortunately, as timely as it is, we've heard in so many different formats in business over the last year and a half talking about living in this COVID quarantine lockdown world. But I think at the core of it are some to me some real, like, sort of important mile markers. When quarantine first went down, we saw DoD and a few other large entities that had always demanded, wet signatures, raised seals, now all of a sudden realize that in-person business can't be transacted that way. We can't not do business, so we have to accept an alternative. And so we've seen some very large entities in our space, very large stakeholders, make some modifications to century-old process to adapt to the modern to the current environment. And so I think one of the things to me that's really important is that we hold on to that spirit of adaptability. That as people see, office openings happening, people coming back together, travel and in-person meetings, and whatever sort of qualifies as normalcy today, because it's not clear as to what that really means. Right. But that we don't lose hold of, hey, we were able to adapt. The world changed, and we all together adapted to it. Let's continue to do that. Let's not just say, okay, adaptation back on the shelf, back to normal. Let's take hold and take ownership of that mindset of adaptability and take it with us every day forward, knowing that the world will continue to change. The pace of change will continue to increase, the demands on our time and money will continue to be more demanding and further need that spirit of adaptability. And so I think if we've learned anything from the past year and a half, it's that we can change. Change isn't that painful. Business can work making changes, and let's keep making changes as the world around us continues to evolve.
So, Adam, when we keep using that word digitization, right? But what does that really mean? What does that mean to you in context of surety?
Yeah, so I think when I think about it, it's the entire life cycle. It's from when an agent comes across an opportunity, dealing with their clients, to submissions to the carrier, to the carrier's responses back to their distribution partners, to the actual bond document. And this is, I think, the biggest barrier again. And when we talk about raised signatures and wet seals and hard paper documents, that we know today that those documents are far more susceptible to fraud, malfeasance, and misuse and misunderstanding, literally falling through the cracks. A piece of paper can literally fall through a crack on a desk and disappear forever. That we know that with secure digital documents, encrypted documents, electronic signatures, that there's more secure, less susceptible to fraud, lower risk ways of doing business that also happen to be cheaper and faster than what we use today. And so across the board, we start checking boxes. Safer, yes. More secure, yes. Cheaper, yes. Faster, yes. Okay, let's really think about adopting this, because the drawbacks are only emotional.
Right.
The drawbacks are not logical or realistic. And and again, it's a long-standing traditional way of doing business, and change is uncomfortable, but change is inevitable.
Well, and you were talking about how we've been kind of pushed into this adaptability. Do you think that push into the adaptability has helped people see those changes you were talking about, the security and safety that there is in these digital systems?
My answer is for sure yes. However, just like anyone who's gone on a diet after Thanksgiving, we know that, hey, we can have a situation that requires change. We can plan the change. We can make the change. Sticking with the change is the challenge.
Yeah.
Right. And so we say, so that Thanksgiving diet and quarantine response to, not being able to do business in person, it's the same thing. We realize there's a problem. We adapted to the change. We made the change. Now let's not backslide, right? So, let's not fall off our diet.
Right. So, Adam, I mean, as you point out, people are somewhat resistant to change, and perhaps that is because they're comfortable with what they know and uncomfortable with what they don't know, and they're probably comfortable with their roles and responsibilities. So, when we talk about adaptability, are we talking about changing processes and how we go about that? Or are we talking about changing roles and responsibilities? What is your viewpoint on that?
The answer is yes. Right? So to answer your either or question with a yes, is that, yeah, we need to change some processes and we need to change some roles and responsibilities. And I think just like we look at all the stakeholders involved, the parties in a surety agreement, we also need to look at the stakeholders involved in the operations of surety. And I think, one thing that I've noticed, and coming from my background of trade credit insurance, from the sort of specialty line insurance world, is specialty lines are like the redheaded stepchild of their larger P&C families. Their gross written premium numbers are often, a rounding error in the total premium of their larger family. However, their bottom line contributions to the company often represent a significant percentage of bottom line. And so what happens is sureties, because their premium, doesn't measure up in the rest of the, family photo, fight and claw for resources. And by resources, I mean technology resources. And so most sureties don't have their own dedicated IT departments. They have to fight for resources from their larger P&C family. And as a result, don't have always the people at the table at their, when they need them to discuss marrying those changes. Because it's not just a business process change. Now it's also a tech change. And a lot of the surety business folks aren't familiar, adept with the current technology. Their larger IT department is, but getting them at the table may be a challenge. Getting budget from their lines may be a challenge. And so that's where we have to bring stakeholders together from the business side and the IT side to be able to now have changes in processes and procedures and changes in roles and responsibilities that make sense across an organization, because we need to have access to all the resources of the organization in order to really internalize what this change means, whose roles are going to be evolving, what processes are going to evolve, and what does the road to the future really look like.
So I get where you're coming from now about roles and responsibilities, about marshaling greater IT involvement, participation. As we like to say, surety is small but mighty, right? So it deserves its attention. But getting back to roles and responsibilities, now you're not talking about the legal responsibilities of the producer versus the underwriter versus
not at all. Right.
Okay.
All of the structure of authority and the legal roles remain exactly the same.
Right.
It's who's responsible for this document.
Yeah.
The person that would stamp the seal.
Yeah.
Those are the types of processes and roles that change. But the legal structure of a surety, 3-part surety agreement doesn't change at all.
Right.
The rules of the game from a legal financial tool remain the same. We're
Right.
not looking to
licensing
change
requirements and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yep. An important distinction. But you're
absolutely.
Right.
And I think maybe that's what some people might be, concerned or hesitant about is there like fundamental change to what a surety bond is? No, it remains exactly the same, untouched. Right. That tool, that portion of this whole world that we're living in works perfectly.
Right. And I think, again, to add to your point, that everybody needs to understand that we need to be more efficient. We need to be more secure in our transactions. But this process is not going to change what the producer does, what they're responsible for, what the underwriter does, what they're responsible for, the obligees' rights and responsibilities, that sort of thing.
Yep. All that remains the same.
Yeah.
It's just, can we all have a better, faster, cheaper toolbox to perform those roles?
Right. Now, I wanted to ask you a little bit about, so digitization, right? You can get there with different kinds of technology. We continue to hear people talking about blockchain and applying it to the insurance and surety context. What's your view on the use of blockchain in this regard?
So, and I think when we say blockchain, it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
Yep.
And so much of it is evolve, or so many things are evolving around distributed ledger technology today that to just say blockchain, I don't know is fair or useful, right? I think there are technologies that allow for secure, safe, fraud-resistant business to take place, and those technologies will continue to evolve, right? From the first lock that was invented, right? Imagine the first antique key lock, all the way to blockchain and quantum computing and all the technologies that are on the horizon now. So is there distributed ledger technology that would reduce fraud and increase transparency and trust in the business? Yes, when the business community adopts and accepts that trust.
Yep.
So I have a better lock, but there's got to be someone willing to use the key. And so,
Yep.
I think when we look at it as a whole across business, we're seeing people all over the business world in every sector investing in distributed ledger technology, and it's not by mistake. This is the future. Is it the present day today? Probably not for Surety today, but it's definitely the direction that all secure document transmission is going to happen in the future. So it's something that, at Tinubu, we invest fully 20% of our revenue in continuous R&D. And so whether it's AI or distributed ledger, blockchain technology, or even looking at quantum computing, those are all things that we're doing because for us to be a quality provider for our clients and for the industry in the future, we need to make those investments today.
Right.
And so we're continuously investing. We'll always be a step ahead of the marketplace we serve because that's our job. If we're not, we're failing.
Well, it was, NASBP working with Surety and Fidelity Association of America. I'm sure you're aware, Adam, we came out with a white paper, in 2021, not stipulating that a certain technology should be used, but providing the characteristics of an electronic bonding system. And when we use the word electronic bonding, we're using that in the broadest sense. But what it really meant was digital processes to convey bonds ultimately. And I think that was a really important pronouncement by the industry to say, look, whatever technology is used, it needs to have these characteristics. So hopefully people are aware of that, particularly as they engage in discussions with stakeholders. And it is available from the NASBP website. And also we have a joint Surety automation page where you can also download it. But I know Tinubu and others were very important in giving us feedback on the characteristics of systems, regardless of the technology.
Yeah, so I think it's not for you to pick a winner in the
Right.
VHS versus Betamax race,
Right.
It's to lay out, hey, here are the qualities and characteristics that the ideal home video system should have.
Yep.
And hey, let's go with Betamax, and everyone else chooses VHS. Right? It's not for you to decide that, but to decide what those characteristics and how we judge them are. And then let the marketplace decide how to move forward. But I think that was a great piece you guys put out.
Well, and as you point out, technology changes, right? So, what may be relevant today may not be relevant tomorrow, but the characteristics of what we need will remain relevant. And that's why you guys are staying on top of it, as you know, because I'm going to go back to your word. Adaptability needs to remain there for the future, regardless of where we go, because that's always going to be something that's part of this process.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that, Adam, when you talked about the speed of change. Even if, as we are going through the adaptation and bringing these digital processes in, it's going to continue to evolve and change. So we all have to, like Mark said, continue to be adaptable as the changes continue to come.
Yeah, change is not an event. It is a constant situation, right? There's no, there was a change and now we're done. No, the world continually evolves. We continually evolve. Our clients continually evolve. And, it's that understanding that everything is always moving and it will always move faster with greater demands on time and resources than it did yesterday. And so not only is change constant, but the rate of change as an increasing constant. Things will always change faster today than they changed yesterday. And we know that's true in our personal lives, in our communities, in the world around us, in our businesses. It's just a constant law of our existence. And so we need to really, wrap our hands around the idea that things will keep changing and we need to be adaptable.
Correct. So, from a digital perspective, what do you think are our greatest opportunities now?
Well, I think the interactions between brokers and carriers is really important. Where we see, typical agency management systems don't really accommodate surety business so well. So maybe an agent shoehorns a record into their agency management system as sort of a placeholder. Then they come over to whatever spreadsheet or notepad, like a physical notepad that they're working on, and they take all that information from their agency application to their whatever their surety system is, and it could just be an Excel spreadsheet or a notepad. Then I'm going to do some data entry over here. Then I'm going to go out to market, right? I might market this to a few different carriers. So I'm going to type it in 3 or 4 more different times. Then I'm going to get responses back from those carriers. I'm going to type that stuff into my system, shoehorn that record into my agency management system, back and forth maybe 2 or 3 times. And next thing you know, by the time a bond is issued, as an agent, I've entered the same data like 12 times.
Yeah.
The carrier has dealt with that data. Hey, when I'm reproducing that same data over and over again, I know I'm likely to make a keystroke mistake. Now the carrier's got to figure out, is that something that needs to be fixed, or did the data change? Back and forth, especially when we're talking about, low dollar, high volume transactional surety. There's just not enough money in a bond to pay for that much manual process.
Yeah.
And so when we think about the world, and so one of the things that I'm real excited about in this past year, we acquired Surety Wave and SurePath Digital. SurePath represents just about 50% of all surety revenue in North America runs through SurePath today. And so when we look at marrying together SurePath, which, sort of is that broker agent world, with eSurety and the carrier world, and as we bring those two products together to allow for efficient transmission of information across the system, and then being able to, as a broker, as a carrier, being able to analyze, now you have digestible data in your system that you can now report on, make actionable decisions on, improve your business based on information you possess, but just not in a digestible, consumable way today. So that interconnected ecosystem between the broker world and the carrier world is for us one of the great next steps. And when Tinubu purchased eSurety and made an investment in the North American surety market, it was followed up immediately by the Surety Wave acquisition, underscoring our investment in the surety world. And truly to our mission, we're here to digitize the surety world. And I think with this marriage of SurePath and eSurety, we really have the ability moving forward to create a new environment where information moves so much easier and more efficiently across the stakeholders.
So, having said all that, you guys are making those decisions and taking those actions. I'm going to put you on the spot, Adam. So, where are we going to be 3 years from now, 5 years from now, and 10 years from now? Are we going to recognize surety processes like we do now, or are things going to be different? Are you an optimist or are you a pessimist?
So I'm optimistic because that's the realistic view. I just think that, when we look at the sort of organic growth of surety, we see a few things. One, a tremendous increase in the number of players in the market, right? Companies getting into surety, realizing that there's opportunities, all new MGAs and MGUs coming up, new carriers getting into the business. And we see people realizing that there's opportunity in surety. We see the infrastructure bill, knowing that there's money and spending for the long term that's going to be driving surety business. We see all sorts of positive indicators that the business is going to grow. We see opportunities for the private construction world to start adopting surety in a new way or expanded way. All of that, new ideas, new players, new funds, new capital, is going to lead to an understanding that, hey, new people are going to do things new ways. People that have been doing this for a long time are going to be able to capitalize on the growth of this marketplace. And so my view forward is very optimistic. And as markets become more well capitalized and growing, and we can see that growth continuing for the foreseeable future, we're going to want new technologies. We're going to maximize efficiencies. We're going to maximize profitability. We're going to maximize revenue. All of these things happening now lead me to have a very optimistic view. And the way technology is growing, the way technology is advancing and being adopted in the world around us in every way, we don't go to Blockbuster Video anymore and rent a cassette, right? I don't even own it. Forget that. I don't even own a DVD player, right? And think about how quick it went from the video store, getting a physical cassette, to streaming everything and not even using a cable company to watch TV. And so we think about how quick the world changes around us, with everything growing and developing in the surety space, in the infrastructure world. I think we're going to see so many new adoptions. But at the end of the day, why did I go to Blockbuster? So me and my kids could watch a movie. Why do I use surety? To provide the financial guarantee required. And so the movie watching experience hasn't changed so much. It's a couple hours for me to spend time with my kids. The surety process isn't going to change much, right? We've got broker, obligee, carrier, principal. The structure of the deal doesn't change. It's just we're going to be able to do it easier, faster, cheaper, with less resources, more profitably.
Well, I love that. I love to hear that. And I think we have coined something on this podcast: the 3 C's of surety digitization: COVID, capital, and competition. Right? That's going to drive us to this new world. So that's pretty.
Mark, you nailed the takeaway on that.
Well, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been great having you on with us today, Adam. I just wanted to let everyone know we're going to include links to the links Mark mentioned earlier in the podcast in the description. We'll also have a link to an article that Adam authored on this topic in Construction Executive, if anyone wants to take a look at that and get some more information. As well as a link to the podcast we had with one of your colleagues, Patrick McKinty, talking about digitization as well. So there's a lot of resources out there, a lot more information. We want to keep everybody moving and adapting.
Excellent. Well, I really enjoyed my time today, Kat, Mark. This was a lot of fun. If you ever want me back on, I'm thrilled to chat. This was really nice.
We'll have to have you back sometime, Adam.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Thanks, Adam.
You've been listening to Let's Get Surety, brought to you by the National Association of Surety Bond Producers. For more information about the NASBP and its members, visit nasbp.org.
Before we go, we just wanted to say thank you again to Old Republic Surety for their generous support in sponsoring this episode of Let's Get Surety. For more information on Old Republic Surety, visit www.orsurety.com.